Judging by the history of haunting phenomena, ghosts are homebodies. The physical body may rest in the grave, but the spirit doesn't. It appears in places and to people who knew it best. And there are some places and some people who seem to be, in a sense, ghost magnets, consistently drawing supernatural energy from the next world into this. Nestled in New York's Hudson Valley, a 2-hour drive from Manhattan, is the town of Beacon. The region had been a vibrant industrial hub throughout the 1800s, but Father Time and the lure of the big city for those who've grown up here have been hard on little Beacon. Many homes in the area are more than a century old, and it was this history and the quaint character of the community that first attracted Julie Cohen and her ex-husband to Beacon in 1985. They bought this charming house built in the 1800s.
And I loved it, and I wanted it.
Julie and her ex-husband began an extensive renovation of the interiors.
The house was in dire need of some pretty hefty work. It had a wood-burning stove, the dining room floor had been cemented, the floors were painted red, and everything had to be done. So we did that, and we worked day and night, and the last step was sanding the floors before we could move our furniture in.
Julie's ex-husband and a friend stained and urethaned the wood floors, then left, locking up the house so that no one could walk on the wet floors. But when they returned several hours later, they found the small, dusty footprints of what appeared to be a barefoot child who'd walked across the floor. Julie's ex-husband was furious. He thought a neighborhood child must have broken into the locked house. But then Julie made an amazing discovery.
To check the floor to see if there had been any damage, I brushed away the dust, the dirt from the floor, and it was tacky, but there was nothing there. There was no more imprint, no foot. It was gone. What I felt was very strange about the whole thing was whoever walked on the floor would have left an imprint in the floor because the floor was wet and tacky from the urethane, and there was nothing there. There was no imprint. There was nothing.
Not long afterward, Julie and her mother were painting an upstairs bedroom. An old radio tuned to a rock station suddenly and inexplicably changed to another station.
The first time that the radio changed on its own, I was in the bathroom and I was cleaning brushes. And I had my music on, and all of a sudden, it started going out of tune. So I went over to put it back, and I could actually see the dial moving and changing to a different song, to a different station, a softer station, softer music, not my rock and roll. And I actually would watch the thing turn and watch the dial move. And I'd move it back, and it would move it back, and I just stopped fighting with it. And said, okay, you win.
There were many nights during that period of renovation when Julie would be awakened by one strange sound or another. There was a child crying in the distance, doors opening and closing by themselves, heavy footsteps on the back staircase when no one was there. After their renovation was completed, the paranormal activity seemed to settle down until Julie gave birth to her first child.
I was breastfeeding, and I'd walk into his room, and the crib would be down. The rails, it was a brand new crib, and the crib rail side would be down. So I'd look, and I'd lift it up, and I'd feed him, and I'd put him back to bed, and it'd be up. And in the morning, I'd go in, and the crib would be down.
Julie's ex-husband checked the crib and found nothing wrong with the railing mechanism, but the strange activity continued.
And finally, I'm feeding him, my oldest, and I'm sitting in the rocking chair, and the closet door opens a little bit, and I hear the noise, and I said to myself, it's a little girl. She's doing it. It's gotta be, because the crib's not broken. And I said, it's okay. I know you love the baby. And I know you want to be with the baby. But you can't put the crib side down anymore because the baby could get hurt. And you can sit with me while I feed the baby, and you don't have to be afraid, and we don't want you to go anywhere. It's okay. And the crib never opened again after that.
Julie became convinced that the spirit of a little girl was living in the old house with her family, and she felt sure that the spirit meant them no harm. For 10 years, during which time Julie had a second child and also was divorced, she continued to feel comfortable with her unseen visitor. But in the fall of 1996, city engineers began to tear up the street in front of her house to lay a new sewer line. This seemed to disturb the entity on a profound and terrifying new level.
I would be laying in bed, sleeping, or even sitting watching TV, and my bedroom door would open, shut, open, close. But not just once, it would just go slam, slam, open, shut, open, shut, open, shut, open, shut. And then it would just stop. And I'd sit there like, I wouldn't even move. Because I was scared. Because I didn't know what it was. I knew what it was, but I just wanted to stop.
In a homespun attempt at spiritual cleansing, Julie bought a small bird feeder, which had a statue of St. Francis of Assisi in the center, and hung it in her living room. She sprinkled the statue with holy water and placed white sage and white votive candles all around it. When Julie lit the candles for the first time, it seemed to evoke the spirit in her house.
I was laying on the couch, and I was looking at St. Francis and watching the light. It was so pretty. And all of a sudden, as I looked up at it, it just started turning. It started moving in a circular motion. And I just watched it for a few minutes thinking, am I really seeing this? And then it stopped. And I looked again, and it went in the other direction.
When Julie revealed her experiences to her neighbors, they didn't think she was crazy because they told Julie that it was happening at their homes too. Across the street and 3 doors down, Stephanie Knapp, her husband, and her 3 children had moved into their home around the same time Julie Cohen moved into hers. Amanda was the first member of her family to witness haunting activity when an electric typewriter in her room took on a life of its own.
My friend slept over and she passed out. We were sitting there and then she fell asleep, so I was just sitting there and I couldn't sleep. And the typewriter just started flipping out. All the buttons were going, but it wasn't plugged in and it wasn't turned on. And then there was shuffled papers underneath. They were just flying around. And then I just tried going to sleep and it wouldn't go away and I started screaming and then it stopped.
The Knapps were also doing renovations to their turn-of-the-century home. Amanda's stepfather was digging out the basement to make room for a new bedroom. Amanda, who was only 6 at the time, was helping him one day when together they made a grisly discovery.
And then we went down there and we started digging. And then we got halfway through it. And then we saw this hand. It was exactly like this. It was all bones, no skin, just straight bone. But you could tell it was a hand. And then after that, he just stopped digging. And then that was it.
Today, some 12 years later, the basement remains in the same condition it was on the day he and Amanda discovered the hand. Amanda says she and her sister buried the skeletal remains in the backyard.
The kids have told me about it. I have to admit I didn't believe them at first. But he's never touched the basement again, and as you've seen, I still have a large hole in my basement. I don't go down there very often. That's the one place that really kind of bothers me.
Just this year, after the birth of her first child, Amanda had a frightening late-night encounter with an apparition.
It was early in the morning. My daughter woke up, and then you could hear someone crying. It was an older person crying, not a baby crying. And then all I heard is, help me, help me. And I looked out the window, and there's this little girl's face. She had curly hair. Help me. And you could just see the tears pouring off of her eyes. And I was like, can I help you? And then she just kept screaming, help me, help me. And then I went upstairs and got my mom, and then I came back downstairs and she was gone. But there's no way that it could be a real person, because the window comes up to here on me. And she stopped right here, and her hair was right here. So she had to be floating because she could not stand on that ground.
After searching for a logical explanation, there is now no doubt in the minds of the Knapp family that their home is under the influence of paranormal forces.
And a lot of people have come to my house, sat in my house, and left believing there's something in my house because things have happened. They have felt the cold. They have seen things. They feel things. And it's unexplainable. Then most people leave thinking I have something in my house, and they get nervous coming back.
You can't make anybody believe unless they're here to feel it. Because I got to tell you, I've watched people on television and I've said, oh yeah, their house is haunted, Sure. But they've got to be here.
Two houses, 3 doors apart, both inhabited by forces that seem to be from another dimension. And, say Julie and Stephanie, they are not the only families in Beacon who are being haunted.
I have heard about a lot of houses in the area that they say that things go on in their home, but they don't really tell a lot of people about it because they don't want it to be known.
Everybody at one time has felt something. And still are. But they just don't want to talk about it because they don't want people to think they're crazy.
With so much bizarre activity witnessed by so many people over so many years, there's no doubt that this neighborhood in upstate New York is haunted. But by what? That's what Julie Cohen wants to know. And that's what Julie Cohen has asked an investigative team to find out. The eerie and frightening experiences encountered by Julie Cohen and the Knapp family of Beacon, New York, have been occurring for more than a decade. The frightening sounds, ghostly imagery, and moving objects continue. Are there rational explanations for what's happening on their street? Or could they truly be the result of the presence of spirits from another time? Before the arrival of a Sightings investigative team, Julie Cohen had already worked with paranormal investigator Randy Liebeck. Skeptical by nature, Liebeck is a police detective who investigates haunted houses in his off hours. He became convinced that something strange was happening in Julie's house the night he witnessed the inexplicable movement of a talisman Julie had made to ward off evil spirits.
I actually observed it moving. I was here with another investigator, and we were setting up some surveillance equipment in the dining room. I turned and looked, and I saw the incense burner spinning around in a circular arc. And I told my colleague who saw it, he thought I had pushed it, trying to fool him. And I told him, no, it wasn't me. We physically stopped it with our hands, stopped the movement, stood back, and it started spinning again. And he saw it begin this time. And it spun for a while, then stopped. Again, we tried to recreate it. We tried stomping, shaking, pounding the walls, walking upstairs, stomping. It wouldn't budge. So I cannot figure out what on earth made it spin the time that I saw it.
After reviewing all of the experiences Julie and her family had had in their home, Liebeck was particularly impressed by the story of the dusty footprints on the newly refinished wood floor.
The thing that intrigued me was that the floor was still tacky wet from being varnished, and the footprints did not adhere, stick, or sink into the varnish. It was like a light dusting of some sort of dust or powder, which I cannot figure out how on earth that could have been done. If somebody walked across the floor physically, there would have had to have been impressions left permanently in the varnish. So whatever walked across the floor had no mass, had no weight. And I can't think of anything that could cause that except for your classical imagery of a ghost lightly walking across a floor.
Based on all of the Cohen's experiences, Liebeck has come to a controversial conclusion.
This house is haunted, yes. There are a variety of explanations and definitions of the word haunted. And the phenomena that's occurring here is real. What Julie and the other people have experienced, they have actually experienced. What I have experienced in this house is real. The question is the causative factors. Is it the spirit of a dead person? There's no way that I can tell that.
In an effort to determine the nature of the spirits in the Cohen and Knapp homes, Sightings put together an investigative team, including a surveillance expert who set up 4 closed-circuit cameras to monitor the homes for an uninterrupted 24-hour period. Under the guidance of Randy Liebeck, 3 of the cameras were placed in the Cohen home, 1 in the former nursery, 1 looking down the main staircase, and 1 in the room where several people had witnessed the swinging talisman. A 4th camera was placed in the basement of the Knapp home. While the surveillance cameras tape-recorded continuous picture and sound, Sightings also brought in psychic investigator Peter James. Peter was given no information about the haunting activity in Beacon. In fact, he had no idea what town he would be traveling to until he arrived. The only people allowed in the 2 houses during the investigation were a 4-person Sightings crew, Peter James and Randy Liebeck, who had a magnetometer to check for anomalous electromagnetism. Peter began in Julie Cohen's house. Julie was in the process of moving to a different house when these pictures were taken. Peter was immediately drawn to the room where the swinging incense burner had been sighted.
There's a cold spot here, and that to me would be an indicator, if you will, that this is like a vortex. This is like a dimensional entrance, if you will, where they, meaning the entities, ghosts, spirits, enter from, leave through, or it's also a source of energy. Something is with us right now. Something is right here. Listen. There's a young. There's also I think a child here as well.
In the nursery, where Julie had so often felt the presence of a little girl and had even spoken to her, Peter James also felt a strong presence. Again, Peter had been told nothing of Julie's experiences prior to this visit.
This room, there is yet a separate energy, and I strongly feel that someone died in this room. There's a lot of sadness. I'm saddened by the way this person died in this room. I think the death that I'm feeling in this room was unexpected and young. I feel very young about this energy. There's like, I think about 3 or 4 people died in this house over the years.
As Peter James and the Sightings team continued to move through the house, Julie Cohen abruptly burst in, obviously shaken. Off camera, she told us that she had had a frightening premonition. She was sure that whoever or whatever was inhabiting the house did not want her to leave. At that moment, both she and Peter felt the presence of a male entity.
I was in the house. I can feel it.
He's right here right now. Hello?
He's near me.
Whoa, he's right here.
I can feel him.
Right here. Put your
Tell him
right
it's
here.
okay, that I can leave.
Calm
I can
down.
feel
Yeah,
him.
calm down here.
Previously, not today, but on previous visits, this location, one of my investigators detected an electrical tingling sensation in the air at this spot at about this elevation, and I detected a magnetic flux in this area.
When Peter moved down the block to the Knapp home, he was instantly overcome by a sense of the dead and dying.
It feels like something was done many years ago with there is a mortuary person, like a mortician or an embalmer, that was involved in this house.
He instinctively moved down into the basement and began to sense that this location was the source of the haunting activity in the neighborhood. Again, Peter did not know anything about what the Knapps say they found here 12 years ago.
Someone died in this basement. Someone died down here, and I think, again, I'm getting that kind of a mystery death syndrome.
There's something unusual in this basement. I'm reading a fluctuating magnetic field stronger than any of the other places we've come across yet. Now, if I went up closer to the wiring in the ceiling, it's going to spike because it's close to electrical conduit. But there's no reason at all for any field down here and the hole in the floor. But I am reading a fluctuating field which is stronger than anywhere else in the house. And there's nothing in the ground here which should be generating any sort of field.
And now, are they walking in the house?
At the same time that Randy Liebeck's magnetometer began to fluctuate, Peter James heard a sound upstairs in the supposedly empty house. The entire team listened and heard the sound of heavy footsteps running across the floor above. Peter James asked that the home's owner, Stephanie Knapp, come in to see if she had a rational explanation.
We've heard distinct sounds, right, gentlemen?
Yeah, there was no doubt about it.
No doubt, like
Very,
someone
very
ran across.
heavy feet.
Heavy
across the
feet.
floor.
No, we were outside.
Okay.
Strangely, the surveillance camera's audio recorder did not pick up the distinctive sound, even though everyone in the basement had heard it clearly.
Because part of your basement has a dirt floor. I don't want to say someone was buried, and I'm not trying to sensationalize this, but I feel that someone died in your basement. A man died in the basement, a male.
Within minutes, Stephanie's neighbor, Julie, arrived, again drawn by a sense that an entity was present in the area.
Randy, what do you got?
We hear footsteps above us.
Get on, Randy.
Above us.
Below us on the stairs heading to the
It's
basement.
cold. It's very cold right here.
There's someone here right now. Hello, who's here? Identify yourself now.
He's at my knees.
Yeah, I just experienced a significant EM flux right by your knee.
Relax, honey.
No, I'm okay. I've had this in this house before.
Listen,
Okay.
the stairs are creaking. Listen.
After everything that had happened in the Beacon houses that night, Peter James offered a startling challenge to the Knapp family.
I would wager to say that if someone did some kind of excavating, if you will, and dug up that basement, that you'd find a full skeletal remains of a body down there. And I think that's the nature of your haunting. That's what's causing the anomalous activity, the sounds, the cold spots, and which are certainly ways to confirm the fact that this man died tragically in this house. That's what I feel.
Following Peter's suggestion, and with the permission of Stephanie Knapp, Sightings hired an excavation crew to dig into the dirt floor of the family's basement. The crew worked for 3 hours, excavating the area where Peter had felt there was a dead body. They dug until the crew chief called a halt. Further excavation could compromise the structural integrity of the house. No skeletal remains were found. Review of the 24-hour surveillance footage also revealed no anomalous activity. Despite the lack of new evidence, Peter James remains convinced that the source of the haunting in this neighborhood is related to something that happened long ago in the basement of the Knapp home. Human remains have been found here, and Peter believes that until those remains are identified, at least one restless spirit will continue to wreak havoc in Beacon, New York. In the meantime, Randy Liebeck offers this advice to the families.
One of the things we I counsel people on when they have a haunting event in their house and they're frightened by it. I tell them, I say, have you tried talking with the ghost? Lay down some ground rules. Explain to it that this is your house. You're the boss here, and either the ghost is not welcome, or if it is to be welcome, there are certain ground rules. And in many cases, I and other investigators have found that when the percipient addresses the ghost or the entity in the house, lays down these ground rules, the phenomena does modify itself to work within those guidelines.
The Knapps have never considered moving out of their Beacon home, but Stephanie and Amanda almost never go in the basement. Julie Cohen has followed through on her plans to move out, but not because the house is haunted. In fact, she is willing to work with Randy Liebeck to search for scientific proof of her experiences.
What's happened here is a gift that we can share, and that researchers can now, and that's where my commitment came in, because Randy helped me get through this at a really bad time, and it's real. I don't know what else to say, is that it's real.
While the Sightings team conducted its investigation, Julie and her family packed up everything and moved out of their house, out of the haunted neighborhood. Since then, Julie reports, the ghostly encounters have stopped and life is back to normal.